Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's coverage of Town Meeting Day 2026. My name's Nick Tatakis. This program is part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the Town Meeting Day election on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. Thank you. You can find all forums at cctv.org/TMD2026 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel where auto-generated captions are available. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, click the subscribe button to stay tuned into local democracy this election season. On tonight's program, we will hear from 4 candidates running for the Burlington School Commission. Those candidates are Melissa Zigmont from Ward 4, Lucia Campriello from Ward 5, Claire Wool from Ward 6, and Polly Erickson from Ward 7. We do have 4 candidates not able to join tonight, but we do thank those of you who are able to join us. And for those of you who had joined, we have prepared a list of questions for you, and you'll have 90 seconds to answer each question. Rebuttals will only be allowed if a candidate is named directly, and in which case the candidate will have 30 seconds to respond. And if you're tuning in live, we also welcome your questions at 802-862-3966. And if you call in, we will do our best to prioritize your question, though we will screen calls to make sure that questions are not repeated. When you do call in, we'll ask you to share your name, the town you live in, and that your question be directed at all candidates, not just one candidate in particular. You can also submit your question for future forums online, again at cctv.org/TMD2026. Without further ado, let's get started with 1-minute opening statements, and we'll start with the person on my right, Polly Erickson. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. My name is Polly Erickson, and I am running for school commissioner in Ward 7. I'm the mother of a middle school student at Hunt Middle School, which I think is one of my first qualifications for running for school board. I also work at the University of Vermont. I have a long experience in education, in managing budgets, and I have a lot of lived experience with members of the global majority. I've lived overseas for a very long time. My own son and husband are members of the global majority, and so I am really excited to take up a lot of that work from my predecessor, Monica Ivanchik, who'll be stepping down. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. Lucia, we'll turn to you.
Great. Thank you, Nick, so much for having us. It's so nice to be here with fellow candidates. And for those who are unable to join, I just want to emphasize what a wonderful team we have on the Burlington School Board, and what a pleasure it will be to welcome some new candidates. My name is Lucia Campriello. I have been serving as Ward 5 School Commissioner for 2 terms. This would be my 3rd term that I'm entering. I believe my qualifications stem from the fact that I absolutely love this work. I care deeply about Burlington as a community. I have some professional qualifications that include things like budget management, policy work, advocacy, et cetera. But truly, I think just my sheer enthusiasm for our public school system, our incredible leadership team, the incredible cohort of volunteers who are part of that leadership team, as well as my lived experience as a parent living in Burlington in the South End with 2 young children, one of whom is in elementary school at Champlain Elementary School, and one of whom is in Edmonds Middle School. So thrilled to be here, really feeling fortunate to be able to continue my service, and grateful for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Lucia. We'll turn to our candidates online, and I'll start with, let's see, it looks like we'll start with Claire. Claire, if you could introduce yourself.
Great. My name is Claire Wool. Thank you so much. I have been serving on the Burlington School Board since 2018. This will be my 8th year. I am a proud parent of 3 Burlington Public School graduates, as well as my husband went to BHS and is a proud public school graduate here. We moved back here after 21 years in New York City. We've enjoyed serving and advocating for the public schools over the course of the last 14 years. My career has been a line producer where finances are near and dear to me, managing budgets, advocating for affordability as well as what the schools need, and really working from the classroom. I started as a substitute teacher just to learn the Vermont system long ago when we moved here, then becoming involved in the schools and then on the school board, and greatly appreciate the collegial role that I have with our fellow school board members, and look forward to welcoming new school board members with skill sets that help guide and govern this incredibly dynamic district here in the state and in the city of Burlington. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And last for opening statements, we'll turn to Melissa.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for inviting me here. I am a first-time candidate here running for Ward 4, so I am looking to fill the seat that Martine Gulick is stepping down from. If you do not know me, I am a longtime supporter and public advocate for public education. I also have children here in the public school system, one at the elementary school level and one at the BHS BTC sites. I am excited to really run for this role, dive in, learn more about the ways that we can continue to ensure that Burlington has equitable and sustainable education for all of our children. And I have been so impressed by the leadership the district currently has. And I look forward to working with them and learning more about all of the inside workings of the district.
Wonderful, thank you, Melissa. We'll keep things going with a question on the school budget, and I'll turn to Lucia this time first. So the Burlington School District Administration has proposed an over $140 million school budget, representing a 4.47 increase from last year's budget. Do you support this budget? Why or why not?
Thank you for the question. I absolutely support this budget, and I would encourage all Burlington voters to vote yes on town meeting day or via mail-in ballot if you happen to have received one at your home already. It is so incredibly important to vote yes for this budget. Your school commissioners and, importantly, your superintendent and district leadership have been incredibly thoughtful in how best to balance the state of affordability in our city with ensuring equitable and quality educational services for all students. I want to emphasize that in addition to balancing affordability and access to educational services, we balance beautifully, and I'm so proud of the district's work at balancing beautifully academic rigor alongside ensuring supports for students who need it most. That is an incredibly difficult thing to do, particularly in the financial circumstances that we find ourselves in as a state. Importantly, this budget is student-centered. This budget is, while it has grown over last year's by roughly $6 million, that is an extraordinarily, it's grown, but also that growth, a lot of that growth has been in spaces that are outside of the school board's control. Things like health insurance costs, which of course, if you're a part of any organization, any business, most employers are experiencing that. And when you are in a business that is heavily driven by personnel costs, you experience that in a pretty significant way. So I think that this budget is responsible. It directs resources to the students who need it most while also challenging every student to reach their potential. There are some cuts in this budget to accommodate decreasing enrollment, which again is an example of how we are balancing the extraordinary financial pressures facing our public education system in Burlington, but doing it in a way that is people-centered and student-centered.
Thank you, Lucia. We will go in the same order that we started with, so I'll turn to Claire next for your thoughts on the school budget. Do you support the proposed budget, and why or why not?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I do support the budget, and I first wanted to show this article. Does it resonate? No. In the North Avenue News, Lucia wrote an incredible article, and every month we're able to share with our community our thoughts and our experience in the roles that we are learning about the financial. As I sit here and think of Polly and Melissa answering the question, we work incredibly hard as a team working with the superintendent. Each year, we do an audit with our finance department to see where the spending happens within our district. Everyone is engaged in this process, and yes, these numbers reflect true costs. What drives this budget, and right now, what our biggest concern is in educating citizens of Vermont and Burlington is that our healthcare costs and our staffing costs are larger than what the percentage of this budget is going up. So when we look at a 4.47 increase in our budget, our healthcare is going up 8%, and our negotiations with our contracted unions and our workforce is up by 5%. So as Lucia said it so eloquently, we balance this budget year after year. We look at data drives our budget. We look at enrollment. We have a financial model that we have explained as well in Montpelier. It works. It is something that is reputable and trusting. I feel incredibly confident with the management of the district, which isn't always the case. We do not budget by advocacy. The loudest voice in the room does not get the budget allocation. In fact, we developed and worked with our RISE allocation, recognizing injustice and seeking equity allocation at each of our schools, so that if a school is in greater need based on its population and student needs, then another school could potentially and do potentially forego some of its resources or financial allocations. So there's so much to talk about because it is such an important time of year where we ask the citizens of Burlington to fund our public schools. But we have such a story to tell within that number that most people just are immediately drawn to. Why is it so expensive and why is it keep increasing? And we can sit with you, and we're available 24/7 and access and our public meetings. And we've talked about this and gone through it in a methodic way each year as we do. But like I said, it's data driven, and it is something that I feel very strongly about, that our district has great strength in as far as its financial house. So yes, I support this budget, and I ask Burlingtonians to support it as well.
Thank you, Claire. I want to turn to Melissa now for your thoughts on the school budget. Do you support this budget, and why or why not?
Thank you. While I do not have the level of detail associated to the budget that Claire and Lucia do, I absolutely support this budget and wholeheartedly encourage everyone to vote yes on town meeting day. From what I can tell, from what I have read through it, this really does demonstrate thoughtful prioritization. It protects our essential student services, it supports our educators, and it still tries to limit the impact on Burlington property owners using the levers that the district can control. And I think given all of those factors, what they have been able to accomplish and protect with a minimal property tax increase absolutely is a responsible approach to where we are right now. And I would really encourage everyone to support it and vote yes on meeting day.
Thank you, Melissa. And lastly, for this question, we'll turn to Polly for your thoughts on the budget.
Yeah, thank you. So when I decided a couple of months ago that I was going to run for the board, I started reading up on the budget issues and actually attending a couple of the school board meetings. And I previously was on the RISE advisory group at CP Smith, so I have a little bit of background into how complicated it is to make these budget decisions. And so, yes, I also support it. I have been very impressed by how rigorously the superintendent and the board think through the budget priorities, and I am similarly impressed as Melissa is with how thoughtful and data-driven the budget process is. It is a difficult time for schools in Vermont with declining populations and rising healthcare costs, and the constant challenge about the mysterious and hard to understand property tax. But again, as someone who's had her child enrolled in the Burlington schools for the last 3 years, and came from an entirely different school environment, and is a product of public schools myself. I love the Burlington school system, and I've sat with principals, and I feel the pain in their faces when it's like, are we going to get an interventionist or an ESL support, or and so. I feel like it's a team effort when the Burlington budgets are made and the implications are thought through at the individual school level. And so I've been told that Burlingtonians love their schools and like to vote yes on the budget, so I hope that trend continues. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Polly. We're going to stay on this topic of school funding, and we've talked, or y'all have mentioned, legislation and tax reform. So we're going to stay on that topic. We could spend a whole forum just on this topic, I'm sure. But in about 90 seconds, based on the fact that the governor and the Vermont legislature are responding to frustrations about high taxes and school spending and have made steps to cut costs through consolidating districts and capping spending, in about 90 seconds, Claire, we'll start with you. What do you think the folks in Montpelier need to hear from local communities regarding these efforts?
Well, it's happening live. We are working with our elected constituents here from Burlington and Chittenden County. We are watching meetings live and listening to proposals. With regards to the cap, this is incredibly challenging. And I have to go backwards in order to go forwards. Our school district worked for 5 years, our school board, in creating a statewide task force to successfully implement Act 127 2 years ago, which created a weighted pupil, finally, a weighted pupil financial system in accounting for pupil spending in the state. And then it was replaced by Act 73 last June with the intent that those pupil weights, how we define the cost of per pupil spending in the state, with Dr. Tammy Colby being a part of those conversations, to a funding formula. So I'm getting a little off track here when we talk about a cap. So a cap is a Band-Aid. It supports controls and levers at the state to understand what the costs will be, predictable costs each year. But a cap does not solve our education financing issues here in the state of Vermont. And so if the goal, which the governor has shared over the last 2 years, is instead of having individuals come up with their school budgets and then tell the state what they need, they want to determine with a ed funding formula or capping that spending so that there's a predictability to it. So as we begin this process again, and on the layers of Act 73, it will be incredibly important that we sound to the State House and those elected officials what it costs to educate our students. And in rural and metropolitan areas with higher needs than, let's say, wealthier school districts throughout the state, those costs are real. And so we had been, rural communities and metropolitan communities had been paying more to educate students than our surrounding communities. And so Act 127 created that equitable balance because there was no real empirical data in how we funded students. Everyone was funded the same, and that is not the reality of costs of educating students. So the cap, how do I feel about it as it begins to be discussed? In fact, today we were talking with our colleagues in Montpelier about what is being proposed and how impactful it would be for Burlington. We have to stay tuned, and we have to constantly be in touch with those elected officials of what's happening in those committee meetings, because it's imperative that they communicate and work with our superintendents and our finance directors to know the real costs, so that we aren't creating one shoe fits all number for districts that cannot operate at the same level based on costs associated with delivering quality education that is the law in Vermont and serving our students.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. I want to turn to Melissa now for your thoughts on what you think the folks in Montpelier need to hear from local communities about these efforts to reform taxes and school spending.
Well, I want to reiterate what Claire said about the weighted students and Act 127. A parent at Flynn, who I respect immensely, made this point a few months ago that as we move forward, looking into Act 73, there is nothing more important than protecting the weights from Act 127 for the future of the Burlington School District. And I really ask that if you aren't aware of this and you're local and you have kids, please look into it, get involved, be informed. The other thing that I think Montpelier really needs to understand is that strong public education is not a cost burden. It's an investment in Vermont's long-term health and economic future. When we have statewide issues like rising healthcare costs, housing shortages, and limited economic growth, it is really easy to turn how we are funding public education as an easy way to find dollars. But Vermont has shown and Burlington has shown that it values robust, well-funded public education systems. And what we have to remind ourselves is that those systems are a major factor in attracting young families here into Burlington and supporting young families to stay and raise their kids and drive that economic engine of this state. So whatever decisions are happening at the state level, we need to make sure that this reform is going to strengthen our public education and not weaken it. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
I'm going to move to her ward so I can vote for Melissa. that was amazing.
Me too. I'm so appreciative of what everybody has to say. It's so spot on. Thank you.
I'll turn to Polly next for your thoughts.
Well, that's hard to follow. Yeah. Similar. Yeah. Wow. So I guess I would just make two points. One is that the move to base the budgets on actual real costs has been really important and was like such a progressive step forward. Transparency in budgeting and the ability to say, no, this is what people actually need in order to learn and have equity and follow all of the legal and ethical obligations that we have to providing equal access to students of all different backgrounds, which is what public schools really do. But having like actual numbers behind that is phenomenally important. I was educated in a large urban district where budget cuts were like a common thing, and so I've seen and witnessed just how detrimental that can be to education. I don't get that feeling in Vermont and in Burlington in particular. I feel like, wow, this is like a really nicely resourced set of public schools, and it is, as Melissa said, these public schools are the backbone of pretty much all of the communities around Vermont. The vast majority of our young people are educated in the Burlington and Vermont public schools. And so, and the last thing I would say is that these schools are like an engine for community engagement and community motivation. And so allowing communities to still feel that they have some control over what's going on in their schools is really important. And I get that continued reform is needed, but imposing a top-down black box formula system is not what we need right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Polly. Lucia.
I mean, what else is there left to say? I will be brief because truly I think everyone has really made all of the important points. I think two things. One, and I think this group probably shares this opinion, you just said so yourself, I don't think anyone disagrees that some sort of change needs to occur, right? Taxpayers are feeling extraordinary pressures throughout the state. And so that's not where folks disagree. It's the how of it that matters most. And I don't envy the job of our good friends and hard workers in Montpelier, because this is a really, really difficult task that they're facing. That said, I agree with everything else that has already been said. And specifically on the caps, I think what's challenging, and Chair Wool spoke to this, when you're thinking about a cap, say for example, you imposed a 5% spending cap for next school year, right? And you contemplate what that means when healthcare costs are rising by 8% and you're in multi-year contracts with your unions, which are, by the way, so important for morale, for resourcing the folks who educate our children, et cetera. These are good things. When you impose a cap that is a one-year cap outside of considering and actually modeling financially the impact of that cap, what results or what can result is deep cuts into the services that you have to provide simply to meet a threshold. And so there's no relationship between that cap and the actual service provision that needs to happen. And so I think to Claire's point, it is not intended to be short-sighted, but it is really a Band-Aid and a short-term, not even solution, but a short-term solve for a very difficult, complex problem. So I would be deeply concerned about that. And then really most importantly, and it's been said already, when making policy, data is the most important thing. And so as we consider the outcomes that we seek with this reform, we're talking about financial efficiencies, savings, operational efficiencies, and better student outcomes. And I, for one, wouldn't feel comfortable supporting a plan that didn't reveal data that affirmed that this reform was going to do that. And I don't think voters should feel confident with a representative that they've elected having that confidence absent that data. And so I think to Polly's great point too, you make good policy with good data. And I'd love to see some more data move into this policy frame.
Thank you, Lucia. We're going to move to a question now that talks about the strategic priorities that the Burlington School District has identified. And I'll turn to Melissa for your thoughts on this first. The Burlington School District's current strategic plan has identified 5 priorities, those being belonging and well-being, deeper learning for every student, reimagined high school, educators who look like our students, and relationship-based communities through his restorative practices. Melissa, in about 90 seconds, which of these are you most excited to work on, and how will you approach these priorities?
So I'm most excited to work on the deeper learning for every student. One of the main reasons for that is that I'm already so impressed with the Burlington School District in regards to the different modalities that they value and that they offer to their students. I also was not born and raised in Burlington. I come from the Los Angeles School District. And so seeing something like BTC that offers both arts and design and very technical automotive and mechanical work and fabrication is really exciting to me. And I think continuing to dive into how we can really enrich these opportunities for our kids to make sure that we are creating students that are going to be thoughtful, curious, and engaged problem solvers. It's just really, really exciting. And I look forward to seeing how we can continue that work, expand on that work, so that really every student, whether it's through art, through design, through tech, through writing, through coding, or through civic service, that they're able to see their abilities reflected in their classrooms in a way that truly feels authentic to themselves. I also feel like giving kids those opportunities in that deeper learning environment is going to help to also easily connect to those other priorities if that is a foundation that we can build and really lift up for everyone.
What's your priority that you're most excited to work on?
Okay, all right. So I'm going to say educators who look like our students. Because, yeah. So, again, as the mother of a Black male student, and someone who's had a lot of lived experience in integrated environments, been a minority, went to integrated public schools, and has moved, in and out of all different kinds of environments. Children really value leadership from people that have a lived experience and an ability to connect with them on like a basic emotional and cultural level. And one of the reasons we were really excited to move to the Burlington area is this long history that we have of welcoming refugees and immigrants. And I've really been impressed by the Burlington School District's, the current leadership's like stepping up to that and all of the initiatives that you've taken. But the hardest thing is finding educators who reflect that lived experience. And so I will continue to support that, but it's not just the looking like our students, but appreciate the need to connect to students who have a different lived experience than you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Polly. Lucia, your thoughts on
My
you're
turn.
most excited to work on?
So one of the things that I value most about the strategic plan is how interrelated each of the priorities are, right? And so each one of them has merit on its own. It's when they come together that we really are creating that environment that is conducive to every student reaching his or her potential. If I have to choose one, and just to differentiate, since others have talked so eloquently, I will focus on belonging and well-being. And I know this comes up in some other questions in other ways as well, but I think when students, again, similarly feel part of a community, when educators feel part of that community, that they belong in that community, everyone is able to perform, right? And so when an educator feels valued, and feels seen and feels like they are part of the broader community and also working in affinity with others who have had their shared experience, it enhances their ability to teach, right? It enhances their ability to build relationships and connect with their students and with their peers. And so I've been really excited to see a lot of positive movement in this space, particularly as we've been measuring over the years since this strategic plan came into place. And again, they're all so integrated, so it's very hard to elevate one over the other, because really when they're all functioning together, then we really achieve the outcomes that we desire.
Thank you, Lucia. And lastly, we'll turn to Claire for your thoughts on which priority you're most excited to work on.
Yes, I love what Lucia said as well. And I love that we've all chosen one, because really I was thinking in 2026, the reimagined high school is, I want to live at that campus when we open its doors
Bring it home,
in
Claire.
April of 2026 with a soft opening. And then we'll have 4 months to be able to move into that high school. And even though this 5-year strategic plan sunsets in 2027, I think, how could we leave these goals, because we worked so hard to create these goals, and they are all so meaningful because they are integrated in the ethos of our Burlington School District. So I really, I have enjoyed focusing and achieving in each of these areas bright lights, student successes, feedback from the community. We're on, that North Star. It might sound corny to people, but these strategic goals do resonate with people. They are relatable and they are achievable, but they require work and a complete circle. Everyone has to be working and contributing together. We don't point fingers and say, has this group achieved that goal? We really work together. So there is such energy around all of it. And yes, the best part about having 12 school board members are each of us can branch out and focus and be accountable to lead a certain goal, strategic goal, or mission within that goal. But I really, without discrediting all those other ones, because they mean so much to me and have throughout my career in these years within the strategic plan, coming towards the last 2 years of it with the understanding that it will always be with us, those goals, they will never end in 2027, but that the reimagining the high school and completing that milestone of work of 5 years, and it will just begin. The joy of the success of just the physical structure being completed. But as Melissa spoke to, having one of my three one of my three children being a Burlington Tech Center graduate, the amazing opportunities that we have, but also even in the curriculum and deeper learning, I am so motivated in this year looking at our high quality materials in the elementary school for curriculum achievement in middle school instructional materials. So professional development is critically important to me. That, if I were to say, balanced by the opening of the high school, looking at the investment the district has in these high quality instructional materials to help in literacy and mathematics, because we are in the business of teaching and as well as you can't teach without students feeling a sense of belonging and relatability to the teachers that are with them 8 hours a day. So thank you. Everyone for speaking about each of those goals so well and passionately about what interests you in helping out the district.
Thank you, Claire. And I really appreciate everyone's comments about the values that you see reflected in the Burlington School District and the broader community. And I'm going to turn now to a question about how some of those values might be under threat. I'll turn to Polly first. That given the continued Trump administration's efforts to cut off funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, end immigration, and remove safeguards for transgender people, what does the school district need to do to protect the community and individual civil rights?
So, again, I've been incredibly impressed with how quickly we hear from the superintendent and his team whenever something happens in the external national political climate around DEI or immigration or ICE or attacks on transgender and the broader LGBTQI plus community. So I would say continue in the way that we have, and I just am again. It's a luxury to be in a school district and in a state where we can just step up and say, this is not how we're going to educate our children. This is not how we're going to raise them. A couple of weeks ago, when there were the large protests downtown, the middle school and the high school enabled all of the kids, even the ones up in the New North End, they got to protest in the library and watch the march online, and the downtown kids all got to go and join in it. And they let them decide how they wanted to protest. Even at the tender age of 11 and 12, my kid comes home and tells me all kinds of things that he's learning at school about rights and about pronouns and about the importance of everybody being allowed to be themselves. And it's so awful elsewhere right now that it's just incredibly gratifying to be in Burlington and be like, no, we're okay here. We're talking about these things openly. All of our leadership responds and says, this is not okay. This is not how our children should be educated and raised, and these are not we want our community to be different. And so I would just endorse more of what we are already doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Polly. Lucia, your thoughts on what the school district needs to do to protect the community and individual civil rights?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, I think, back to the belonging and well-being. So much of this work happens every single day. Mm-hmm. And that's what I appreciate so much about the values at Burlington School District and not shying away from our values. Why would we do that? It's human rights. It's actually not political, as it turns out. And so I think that continuing to do the work that is done every day to build community inside of our schools is incredibly important. And the reality is that we need to do a lot of safety planning for families who feel like their children aren't safe. Parents don't feel safe in our community right now. Increasingly, I worry that children or parents will keep children home because they're frightened, depending on what activity and the volume of that activity looks like in town. I'm grateful for the district's leadership approach and planning work that is happening right now. And I think, again, we lean heavily on some of the partnerships that already exist, right? And so the stronger we are as a community inside of our schools with our educators and the trusted adults in that school environment and those children feeling safe, children of all ages, flexing the partnerships that we have with community-based organizations, with our law enforcement officials, with our city's administration, leaning on those partnerships that, again, already exist and are strong, and proactively planning for scenarios in which things get worse and students and families feel less safe. The other thing that I think a lot about is for so many students, if they don't feel safe at school or their parents don't feel safe at school, that might mean that they are not eating 3 meals a day. It might mean a whole host of other services that aren't reaching those children. And so similarly and sadly, the district did a really incredible job during the pandemic of ensuring that services were reaching families at home, especially those families who didn't have access to services, to food, to basic needs. And so I'm confident that the district's response, should it need to respond in that way, will uphold those values. But yeah, it's wild and unacceptable, and no one should feel afraid to go to school, to live their lives, to be who they are, their authentic selves, and it's really quite criminal.
Thank you, Lucia. We're going to turn to Claire next for your brief thoughts on what the school district needs to do to protect the community and individual civil rights.
Yes, communication is essential. Ever since I became a part of the board and the hiring of Superintendent Flanagan in 2020, the feedback from our community is knowledge is power. If you equip us with the information we need, the day-to-day concerns and the future concerns that you have as regards to safety, our Vermont state laws, our lawmakers, our politicians, I mean, we remain a non-political body, but we work with our elected officials to share those concerns at the school level, at the district level, at the family level, as Lucia spoke to, also at our community partners level. So communication, we have an amazing communication specialist, Russ Ellick, in the district, through our liaisons, through our family advisories. This is the first superintendent that I know with the community updates that are time sensitive. They work in collaboration with our multilingual liaisons, so they are interpreted in real time, so people are getting that information. And then within our schools, as Lucia said, I mean, it is critically important for us as a school district to communicate to our politicians and elected officials in Montpelier. I mean, the social services that this public schools have now taken on for funding cuts at the federal and at the state level is daunting. And so not only do we have the care, the health care, the mental health care, and the family support in each of our schools from our counselors. But I do believe our community knows who to call if they're concerned. And through that communication that has just been referenced with those updates, we can that's our best, way to support families, through solid communication and feeling that we have a sense of, what's happening around us on a timely basis, given the federal government and the state that we're in now. But certainly, we look to our state officials as well in working with the federal government, our Secretary of Education and our governor in those communications that come out that are alarming and concerning and a threat to our public students and humans throughout the entire United States.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. Last, I'm going to turn to Melissa for your thoughts on what the school district needs to do to protect the community and individual civil rights.
Again, so much has already been so eloquently stated. I'm not sure what I can add at this point, but just to reiterate both the sense of gratitude that I have for what I've already seen the district step up to do, and not just the district, but the community. I think everyone in Burlington is very aware that we are thankfully living currently in a very safe, open city, even though we are seeing increased activity overall in the state. I think the most important thing we can do, to Claire's point, is constant communication, building those community partnerships, and making sure people have ways to be informed, and that the school board is constantly in touch with our wards, with our communities, to make sure that we are representing the values of Burlington in our schools, and that every child feels like they are safe to attend class, and that families feel supported and cared for during what is honestly a very difficult time.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that we've been talking about some difficult topics. And my next question for you all is going to ask you to drill down to the biggest challenge that you see facing Burlington schools and how you would use your seat on the school board to address that issue. And I'll turn to Lucia first for your thoughts on the biggest challenge facing Burlington schools.
Great. I'm going to try to be succinct. I don't remember how long our program is, but it's 6:11, so I'm going to get to it. I'm actually going to choose two goals, one inside the schools and then one sort of that impacts the schools. I'll start with the one inside the schools, and that's the achievement gap. We are very laser focused right now on understanding the data that has revealed for us a pretty significant achievement gap in our schools. What I am excited about is that we are all eyes wide open, don't accept this achievement gap, and are hungry to change that. And what I've seen of the district leadership over the last handful of years that I've been closely involved is a laser focus on understanding the data and then building the scaffolding around that data to create an intervention that will generate success. We've seen that with some of the metrics in our strategic plan, and I'm confident that with laser focus on our achievement gap, we will deliver those interventions, and this budget actually begins to resource some areas in new and different ways with an exacting eye toward doing that. So that's sort of inside of the schools. And then outside of the schools, and we began the conversation in this space, we have got to grow in Vermont. So I feel really passionately about supporting pro-growth policies at the state level. We cannot cut ourselves to death. We cannot use language and rely on things like caps for spending. We have to be focused on how we can grow our community in order to support the essential services that we need. Melissa said it so beautifully. Public education is the biggest driver of economic opportunity for so many families. And without a strong, healthy public education system, we will not attract families to this community. And if we don't attract families to this community and more people to Vermont in general, we will not have a tax base to afford the things we all care so deeply about. So inside of our schools, redirecting on that, closing that achievement gap is essential for us and is work that is underway and that is receiving serious focus. And it's our job as commissioners to hold the district accountable in that work and to pay close attention to that work. And then externally, it's really about supporting pro-growth policies at the statewide level to attract folks to this community and to resource the services that we so desperately need in order to grow and thrive.
Thank you, Lucia. I'll turn to Claire next for your thoughts. In about 90 seconds or less, how would you use your seat on the board to address what you see as the biggest challenge facing Burlington schools?
I look at, I would hate to change the question, but the biggest challenge for me in the years that I've been on the board and I'm looking at the state is really Burlington, what affects what the state will determine, and I was just not, this past year was really concerning to me. So I'm not going to avoid the question, but I'm not going to speak to what the biggest challenges in Burlington is. I really want to look at the biggest challenge of our state is. And when I think about it, we focused last session on, I heard more voices from the 18% of Vermonters that attend public school choice, and those are the private academies throughout the state, while 82% of our state goes to public schools. And that is a concern of mine going into this next legislative session, that we put in place chairs of our education committee that represent private schools. And a lot of the protection around our private schools and school choice, where at the expense of our public schools. And so my biggest concern will be based on, as we go forward, that is it sustainable in our state for taxpayers to pay for the 18% that attend private schools that do not have to disclose any of their finances that we do as public schools, just is extremely concerning, and I don't think it's sustainable with a state our size. And if we are looking, like Lucia said, to grow and to invest in our public schools, which really, think about where are our public schools? They're in the centers of all of our communities or towns or local areas that we need to drive people to live. And we have to support those public schools first. If 80% of our students go to the public schools, then the representation at the table making those decisions for education reform have to be presenting the public schools' concerns around legislation rather than protecting our school choice, because those school choice communities could attend our public schools. So that is of great concern for me. And I think when we talk about it, a lot of times in Montpelier, Chittenden County, and Burlington, I mean, our Burlington taxes have a tremendous, I'm sorry, I'm going over time, contribution to the Ed Fund. And for us to think about the impact of reducing the needs that we have and yet protecting our private schools for families, that is a big concern for me.
Thank you, Claire. I want to turn next to Melissa for your thoughts on what the biggest challenge facing Burlington schools is and how you would use your seat on the board.
So I'm going to start off by saying I agree with everything that Claire and Lucia said. I'm going to take a small pivot, though, for something that if you knew me well, you'd know is something I talk about a lot, which is a concern I have for our students overall, which is honestly ed tech, or the educational technology that is in the school. More and more research is coming out about how this one-to-one ratio of student to technological device is not actually providing the cohesive educational system that we want, but rather it's actually a detriment to attention, cognitive development, and actually has the ability to have an adverse effect on educating kids, especially in the lower grades. So going back to my love of our deeper learning for all children priority would be to really dig deep and look at how we're using this education technology. Is there a way we can make sure that we are ensuring that it's enhancing our learning? And are there ways to actually pull back from it and follow the research, follow what other countries like Sweden, Denmark, and other states like Utah are doing to make sure that our children are really becoming critical thinkers and that we're not going to end up with another generation that's at a cognitive decline like some of the data is currently pointing to.
Thank you, Melissa. To close us out on this question, I'll turn to Polly for your thoughts on the biggest challenge facing the Burlington schools.
Yeah, so I mean, apart from the budgetary issues that we started the conversation with, I think the thing that upsets me the most is this sort of continued devaluing of education and seeing the need to invest in how our children learn and what they're going to be equipped to do in what's an increasingly complicated and difficult and challenging world. So, I mean, I had written down here sort of something similar to what Lucia said. It's that they need to provide equal opportunities for these students with this incredible range of different abilities and needs, and yet teachers and staff are doing it in a culture that feels like to me is like, well, education, that like like we've forgotten how important and dear and precious it is for our kids to be well equipped to go into the future. So so I think like what's exciting about being on the board is it's like, no, we take our public education really seriously, and we as a team of people are super committed to governing that, and that is a benefit for all of us. It helps us grow. It helps our children deal with an incredibly complicated future. But what I want to say is I really feel the burden for the teachers in just what a range of students they have to accommodate every day, all day. And so that comes back to we need to really value everyone who's involved in educating our children as like incredibly critical, important parts of our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. We are nearing the end of our program tonight, and I want to let everyone who is in attendance tonight offer some closing remarks, and I will start with Claire. In about 30 seconds, what are the final thoughts you'd like to share with your constituents?
I am just incredibly grateful. It inspires me to be a part of this show tonight, and I thank you so much to CCTV for this space and your opportunity for us to have a Commissioner Corner every month to highlight students and people within the district and community partners that make our public schools thrive here in the city of Burlington. I am stimulated beyond belief with the passion that we as civic volunteers work to the betterment of our city and our students, the welfare. Like we've shared, it is, we always think about if this was a business and we employ and attract all of these people, what a successful business we have, because our teachers show up, our families are engaged, we have dedicated, I loved hearing what you just said, Polly, dedicated educators. Our retention rate is strong. We have passionate educators. Come into any of our schools and you will see the opportunities that exist for students will always improve. We have been a part of the digital native generation, and I love what you said, Melissa, as well. I've read all those, not all of them, but articles about those impacts. We're combating cell phones, but the work is every day for me something that I thoroughly enjoy, because the success is seeing it in the outcomes of our students and living in a college town and being surrounded by higher education and the opportunities that do exist living next to a teaching hospital for all of our students. We are in an incredible community that values teaching and learning and creating opportunities for all of our families, and most importantly, our pre-K to 12th graders. And we also serve post 12th grade for our students that need that support. So I just feel very fortunate, and I look forward to serving this community in Ward 6 in my role and continuing with Superintendent Flanagan and the district leadership, because it is certainly challenging times, but I'm always hopeful when I walk into a classroom and I see familiar faces and get to know students and strangers that become friends, and working sort of in that servitude for the betterment of our city and school district.
Thank you, Claire. Melissa, I'd love to invite you to share some brief closing remarks.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I also am, as always, inspired by the people who get involved here in Burlington. To the residents of Ward 4, I know I have very big shoes to fill, but I have just loved watching my children flourish here in the Burlington School District. They are more confident, they are more self-assured, they are more aware of who they authentically are, having attended these schools, and the opportunity to provide any sort of governance or support to make sure that that is a system that is in place for generations to come would be an absolute honor. So thank you so much for giving me time and a platform to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you, Melissa, for being here. Polly, any brief closing remarks?
Yeah, yes, also thank you for organizing this and having us be here, and thank you to my 3 other colleagues who were here with me. I mean, I was just really honored when my predecessor and another engaged person in Burlington asked me if I would do this, and it took me like 2 seconds to say, oh yeah, actually that would be amazing. And then the time I've spent in the last couple of months of meeting people and going to the board and reading all of this, I'm excited. My brother is a middle school teacher, and he was like, I want to be on the school board. That would be so cool. He doesn't teach in Burlington, so it's such a privilege and an honor, and yay. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. Lucia?
Likewise. Thank you so much for hosting us. This has been really fun. I can't wait to spend more time, Polly, with you and Melissa. Claire, can't wait to continue to serve alongside you. Yeah, I just, I don't know what there is left to say other than I have so enjoyed serving Ward 5 residents, and I look forward to continuing that service. I've been participating on the Policy and Governance Committee actively for the last 4 years. It's work that I really enjoy and really critically important work. We've done a lot together in those 4 years insofar as introducing an equity policy that we run all of our policies through. We've revamped the entire process of how we make policy, and there's more work to be done there. So I look forward to continuing that body of work and continuing to serve. And I think the last thing I would say is just to extend a call to action to all Burlington residents, whether you have children or not. There is space for you to be involved in our school system. There's space for you to volunteer. There's space for you to participate, to champion, to advocate for our public schools, and just get to know us. If you don't feel like you know us well already, feel free to reach out to any of us as commissioners and candidates over the next handful of weeks. We make ourselves as available as possible, as Claire said, and come visit. Don't be a stranger. It's an awesome place. There's lots of great work happening, and the more the merrier. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you to all the candidates who joined tonight. Really appreciate your time. And thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, budgets, and ballot items. You can find this and many more local forums at cctv.org/TMD 2026 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. And don't forget to cast your ballot on Town Meeting Day or before March 3rd. And then tune in to Town Meeting TV's recap results show that evening starting at 7 p.m. Contact your local clerk to find out how to obtain a ballot and to register to vote. And remember, in Vermont, you can register to vote on Election Day. How cool is that? Thank you for watching and sharing Town Meeting TV. Good night.